Holy Gospel according to Mark, the 4th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
The same evening, Jesus suggested they cross over to the other side of the lake. With Jesus already in the boat, they left the crowd behind and set sail along with a few other boats that followed. As they sailed, a storm formed. The winds whipped up huge waves that broke over the bow, filling the boat with so much water that even the experienced sailors among them were sure they were going to sink. Jesus was back in the stern of the boat, sound asleep on a cushion, when the disciples shook him awake. They shouted over the storm, "Master, don't you care that we're going to die?" Jesus got up, shouted words into the wind, and commanded the waves, "That's enough. Be still." And immediately the wind died down to nothing. The waves stopped. Then Jesus said, "How can you be so afraid? After all you've seen, where is your faith?" The disciples were still afraid, slowly coming to grips with what they had seen, and they said to one another, "Who is this Jesus? How can it be that he has power over even the wind and the waves?" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
I'd like to stop right there and consider what was on the other side. This phrase, cross over on the other side. In the very beginning of this reading, this phrase is in the Bible just 7 times. Actually 6. 6 times and once in the Apocrypha. There's only one reference in the Old Testament. That is in 1 Samuel 26, when Saul, along with 3,000 troops, are chasing King David to kill him. But David receives word about this, and while Saul is sleeping, David carefully removes Saul's spear from next to his body and his water jug and crosses over to the other side of where they are and speaks to Saul from a distance. When Saul realizes that David was able to get so close while he was sleeping, he confesses his plan and apologizes, and David forgives him, returns the items, and continues on his way. The other uses of cross over to the other side are in the gospel accounts of Jesus calming the storm, Jesus walking on the water, the priest and the Levite who cross over to the other side of the street in order to pass by the man lying in the road beaten almost to death, leaving him for the Good Samaritan to attend to. And finally, in the story of Jesus' arrest, which leads to his crucifixion in John 18, where we read, Jesus went out with his disciples and crossed over to the other side of the Kidron Valley. He and his disciples entered a garden there. And so in these biblical accounts that use the phrase cross over to the other side, what is on the other side? It seems like what is on the other side varies. In 1 Samuel, it is reconciliation. In the gospel accounts, on the other side, we find a large crowd and a man with so many demons, their name is Legion. In the story of the Good Samaritan, on the other side of the street, we might say, is the freedom to not get involved in a situation that would cost one time and compassion and in the end money. And finally in John, on the other side is a garden in which Jesus is arrested, which was the beginning of his suffering and ultimate death. In one of our First Be Lifted services in 2020, we heard our choir sing this hymn, this anthem, which was pre-recorded. It's called "The Storm is Passing Over." It begins, "Take courage, my soul, and let us journey on. Though the night is dark and I am far from home. Thanks be to God, the morning light appears. The storm is passing over. I confess I chose that anthem because I thought it would give us a sense of where we were in the drama of COVID-19 that was just beginning to unfold. I thought that the storm of death and destruction that COVID-19 was bringing with it would pass over relatively soon and we would return to life and church as usual. Little did I know, did any of us know, it would be nearly a year and a half before the storm would in fact be passing over and we would begin to see the shore on the other side of this pandemic. And now that we are nearly there, let's consider what for us is on the other side of the worldwide pandemic that has taken more than 600,000 lives in the United States alone. And yet, we are alive to see the other side. What is waiting there for us? Will there finally be reconciliation between loved ones whose relationships were battered during the last 4 years? Will some go on with their lives as if nothing happened, in a similar way to the priest and the Levite who crossed to the other side to avoid taking responsibility for a neighbor's well-being? Will we meet challenges so extensive that we call them legion? Or see suffering so embedded that we wonder if the lives of those who lived will ever be the same? On this Sunday, we are also remembering Juneteenth, that is June 19th, in which we commemorate black and brown people being informed that they were free 2 years after the Civil War ended. We also commemorate the Emanuel 9, who were gunned down on June 17th, 6 years ago, during a Bible study at the historic Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, by the white boy they had welcomed into their midst. On Juneteenth, former slaves found freedom on the other side. On June 17th, 8 of God's beloved children crossed over to the other side. That is the passage to that place in which the only road in leads right smack through the valley of death. This past week, Juneteenth at last became a national holiday. Opal Lee was one of the people celebrating the Juneteenth bill, now written into law, that acknowledges the day slaves received the good news that they were free at last. It also acknowledges what they had to get through to cross over to freedom. And it is a day in which we are compelled to consider all the ways we still need to do the hard, enduring work to make that freedom a true reality for all people, and especially all people of color. Let's listen to Opal Lee as she speaks about the significance of Juneteenth in this short video now.
Signs into law to declare Juneteenth a national holiday. Juneteenth marks the true end of slavery in the United States.
And one Texas woman waited her entire life for this moment. Erin Jones from our sister station KTVT in Dallas has her story.
Her entire life, 94-year-old Opal Lee has celebrated Juneteenth.
The bill is passed.
And now Congress has passed a bill making it a federal holiday.
I've got so many different feelings all gurgling up here. I don't know what to call them all. I'm so delighted to know that finally we've got a Juneteenth bill passed.
It symbolizes Opal Lee,
from Fort Worth, Texas, long known as the mother of Juneteenth in Fort Worth, and now known nationally for her endeavors to help make today possible.
Lee has worked towards this moment her entire life. 5 years ago, she walked from Fort Worth all the way to Washington, D.C. to urge lawmakers to make this happen. The day celebrating June 19, 1865, marking the true end of slavery in the U.S. On that day, slaves in Galveston were informed of their freedom by federal troops, about 2 months after the end of the Civil War and 2 years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. At Globe Life Field during the Arlington Black Chamber of Commerce's 5th annual Juneteenth celebration, attendees joined in her joy.
I think the reason we got to where we are today and we have a national holiday to celebrate is because of work for people like her. So what would I say? Thank you, because she's done the heavy lifting there.
Lee says there were times she wasn't sure this day would happen in her lifetime. However, she says she always kept her faith alive.
I need to be on my knees praying, because the Lord's been so good to me. You know, you can't do these things without his help.
In the days, weeks, and months to come, she says she'll continue to lean in. Her work is not over yet.
We might take a breather, short one. We've got all of these disparities that we've got to address. And I mean all of them. And while we've got some momentum, I hope we can get some of it done. We can have one America if we try.
Yes, Miss Lee. There are so many issues of disparity that still cry out for justice. And we are wise to factor those in or reconsider their significance and our ability to help shape the future as we begin our new life on the other side of COVID-19. The other side surely holds promise for us, as it did for the man possessed by a legion of demons. The other side invites us to choose the extent to which we will get involved with other people's suffering, as it did for the priest and the Levite, who opted to let the Good Samaritan do the heavy lifting. The other side also holds death, as it did for the Emmanuel 9 and all those who have died from COVID-19, as well as other conditions for which scientists are still seeking a cure. And perhaps the biggest thing we will find on the other side is an invitation into new life, as it did for the slaves and as it does for every one of us who takes the time to consider what we learned in the crossing and realign our priorities accordingly, that those lessons will not be lost, because we are almost there. And one thing is certain: Jesus approached crossing over to the other side consistently with insistence that he and the disciples must go there. Staying where they were was never an option. The gospel of Jesus Christ always beckons us into a future as yet unknown, and we enter into it carried in the arms of hope. This is where we are today, seeing the shore, some of us already out of the boat, and we would be remiss if we did not begin our work on the other side by remembering the lessons we learned during the crossing and how those lessons might guide us now that we are almost there. Because too often, we tend to get to the other side and celebrate instead of getting to the other side and taking the time to remember, to commemorate not just the landing, but the crossing, to take time to recognize, acknowledge, and thank all those who got us through, beginning and ending with God's own Holy Spirit. There are lots of reasons for this. Some people sort of slept through the storm, avoiding news of the suffering and fear and stories of courage that came across the news day and night for months on end. Others who served on the front lines for the last year and a half are far more aware of how dangerous the crossing really was and how many did not make it and who they were. Still others who were fortunate enough to have their job in our collective trauma be to stay home. They might find their emotions are more raw than usual because they didn't realize that they had been holding their breath for months while they witnessed death without family, funerals without touch, high energy children 24/7 without relief of grandparental help or sending them to school. Some people are so traumatized by what we've lived through, they fear that even so much as acknowledging it will stir up their pain, which they have carefully tucked deep inside where it will only hurt when it insists, and it will, in coming out in body, mind, and spirit at the least opportune time. Because that's the way it is with demons, right? We can ignore them, but eventually they will shout and insist on being recognized. In today's gospel, Jesus and his disciples would find people in need of healing and the continuation of their mission on the other side. And so it is for us. Whether you are crossing over to life after cancer, or finding life with a new regimen for healing that includes invasive procedures at regular intervals, whether you are crossing over from elementary to middle school, from middle to high school, from high school to the beginning of the rest of your life in a new school, new job, new adventure. Maybe you're crossing over from being childless to being a parent, or from being a parent of children at home to being an empty nester. Maybe you're crossing over from a lifetime of working into retirement, or from life with your father or mother or other loved one in it to life with them already on the other side. Even a baby crosses over from life in the womb into this noisy, bright, chaotic world where the only thing the baby might recognize is the sound of his or her mother and father's voice as they rocked them for 9 long months, assuring them in loving whispers that soon they would see one another face to face and new life for all would begin. In the days ahead, I invite you to join me in the work of remembering the crossing as we stand together on the shore. Ideally, I'd like each of you watching to send me a few words about what you learned in the last year and a half and how what you have learned has changed you. What did you learn about your priorities, your daily practices, your ability to persevere? To quote our 2 Corinthians reading, what did you learn about the power of genuine love, truthful speech, and the power of God? What practices of our church that seemed necessary before COVID-19 now seem optional? What ministries of our church now seem non-optional that you would like to see begun or expanded? Please send your thoughts, cryptically or eloquently written, to us at beyelifted@gmail.com. I'll look forward to reading them. People of God, it is true. We are finally nearing the shore. The storm is passing over. We stand both as witnesses to what has happened and as co-creators with God as to what happens next because of all we have seen. The good news is that surely we have come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, who came and walked among us, was crucified, died, and was buried, and on the third day rose again from the dead, so that we might know that even crossing over to death does not end the love of God for God's people. It is this one true God who has brought us this far and who raises us up over and over again, not because of who we are or what we have done or what we have left undone, but because of who God is, the one who insists we cross over many times in life, and the one who has never failed us yet.
Just